One.
We had this morning a discussion here on the issue of guilt.
Yes.
And so we have introduced that, and she will tell you what she said so far.
Okay, and go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
We introduced the subject by trying to understand what guilt is, and that it involves the phenomenon of blame, or the idea that one could have and should have done something differently, and that guilt is a very common principle of interpersonal manipulation.
Yes. Yes.
And also that there, we discussed ways in which guilt is used in this way, but that there also seems to be this moral dimension where the cultural assumption is that if you've done something really bad, you should feel guilty.
Yes.
And then we introduced your definition of guilt as boasting.
Yes.
Showed how the idea that I am bad or I am to blame is never helpful in resolving an issue.
Yes.
We mentioned that you distinguish between guilt, which is never valid, and remorse and regret, which are. And I wonder, perhaps you could begin by clarifying for us a little bit this distinction.
Well, as you said, guilt is a self-confirmatory stance, is a devious way of being self-confirmatory. And it is the mainstay of the Catholic Church and of Jewish mothers. Regret, of course, is something that when we recognize that we were ignorant and made a mistake, and so we regret it. But in this regret, there is no self-confirmation, there is a recognition that something needs to be learned, something needs to be known, that a step forward needs to be made in our understanding of reality. And so regret, I am not talking much about remorse, because that's somewhere in between of guilt and regret. But regret, we regret if we made a mistake, and we may be even embarrassed about it, which is very helpful, but we just look at it and say, well, I am not yet sufficiently enlightened, and this is an opportunity where I can learn something and move ahead, rather than beat my breast and engage in self-confirmatory ideation. And so that's the difference.
Now, if the incident involved another individual, would regret ever involve verbalizing to that individual that you've discovered you made a mistake, or would it involve that at all?
Well, if it were a loving thing to do, certainly one could apologize and explain that one at the time when and so forth. But it's not an important factor. The important issue is to learn something. Because, many people apologize profusely. They even call long distance on the telephone to apologize. But if the lesson has not been learned, then a change has not taken place in consciousness. And therefore the apologies are purely intellectual and hollow, and they are not really effective. much of apologizing is absolutely futile. It's just a continuation of bragging. But if the apology is based on having learned something from our mistake, having reoriented ourselves mentally, then the apology is very effective. Because then a different individual is explaining himself. If we have not learned from our mistake, then the same individual is seeking forgiveness without having really made a remedial step of correcting his own ways of seeing and looking at the situation. And then that's why most apologies are hollow and futile. They are just social amenities or something like that.
That's very clarifying. Would it also be, would it follow then that if something has really been learned, that the individual is transformed in that, with regard to that issue, that even if one does not verbalize what one has learned or apologize, something happens in the mental climate that sort of removes the mistake or the effects of the mistake?
Yes, that is very true. Yes, even without verbal apologies, a change will take place, even if it is never expressed verbally. A healing will take place between the two individuals involved or more.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Anne.
Dr. Marjorie.
Yes, Marjorie.
From Iam's question, I'm not sure, are you indicating that the idea of regret is something we understand more clearly rather than blatant remorse? There isn't?
Yeah, it's not necessarily to be remorseful. Sometimes we cannot help it.
Oh, I see.
But regret involves facing up to our ignorance. An interesting situation just happened last week. A mother was complaining about her son who abandoned her and for a couple of years didn't call, didn't write, completely ignored her because, as he told to some friend of the family, my mother never understood me, and my mother never thought highly of me, and some kind of a drive he had against her mother. And as we considered this, it became clear that the mother entertained the same thoughts about herself in regard to her husband and to her mother. And as she has recognized that the son was only playing back her own thoughts about herself, suddenly her mistake became clear to her, and she regretted it, and then and there she changed her thoughts about herself in relation to her husband and mother, and that's all that happened. She recognized her mistaken fantasy about herself, and so, well, I can see that this is not really true, that my mother understood me and she did not ignore me, and my husband does understand me and he does not ignore me, and that was a mistake on my part to think this way about myself. And 2 days later, the son called on the telephone and told her that he's going to give her the address and his telephone number, and he would like to resume contact with her. So she didn't apologize to the boy. She just corrected her mistaken fantasy about herself. And the son was at a distance. Nevertheless, something has communicated itself through subliminal, perhaps telepathic channels, that suddenly the son decided to re-establish contact with his mother.
I would like to understand a fantasy that I have. This past week in my teaching in my classroom, I was really overcome with, I noticed in a couple of classes especially, that the students seem to be consistently interested in being bored, and they manifested in many ways, and I found myself feeling guilty and badly about it, and even to the point where there were moments when I apologized and would say things like, I'm sorry, or something. It was amazing, you know, I'd be teaching something and something would happen and I'd go, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't believe it. So that I started looking at it more closely, and the more interested I became in alleviating their boredom, the more bored they became.
Yes.
And I usually do that by entertaining, which has never really always been helpful in the classroom. And so I would work real hard, and I would sit down and study and spend hours on coming up with new ideas that I could present to them and so on. And it didn't seem to work out. And so it seems as if I really need to understand something.
Yes.
Because it seems as if the issue is to teach the children. And yet I'm really distracted by their concern for, you know, not being bored. The only thing I think I understand a little bit is that I know that the opposite of boredom is excitement. That's all I can work with now. So I would like to have some help on what it is I need to see more clearly or work with.
Well, it sounds like you are afraid that they will be bored with you.
Yeah.
Well, if you are afraid that they will be bored with you, then you have to become an entertainer.
Yeah.
And work hard so that they would be entertained by you. Now, what is the issue in an educational situation? Is it the teacher or is it the teaching?
The teaching.
All right. So if then the subject matter is the issue and not the person or the teacher. And perhaps that is what you have lost sight of, and maybe that may be the mistake in your teaching, that you take it personally. And your attention is more focused on yourself than on the subject matter. Are you interested in Marjorie or are you interested in mathematics?
It varies, you know. Sometimes I'm interested in Marjorie, sometimes. Yeah, I'm teaching reading and history now, so sometimes I'm interested in reading and history.
The important thing is for the teacher to be interested in the subject matter which she is teaching. And then there will be no problem about boredom or entertainment. The remedy to this business is being interested in what we are teaching.
That's interesting because it just dawned on me that boredom seems to be a manifestation of, you know, the people really get bored with you. I mean, it's like if the students manifested an interest, then I would be teaching the subject matter. And yet when I manifest my entertaining or trying to make it exciting or something with my personality, they get bored.
Right, right.
That's amazing. Another question. I just wanted to know if guilt manifests or kind of spurred on compulsive behavior too. If when you feel guilty, it seems like sometimes when I feel guilty or bad or think I've done something, that I find myself compulsively responding or reacting. Is that true that they go hand in hand?
Guilt and compulsion?
Yes.
Well, that's possible because compulsion is a way of coping with irrational hatred and resentment. And so if you are afraid to become aware of your resentments of long standing, then that would be predisposing you toward guilt feelings. And we are trained in childhood to feel guilty because that's a good weapon with which to intimidate people and keep them in line.
If I notice that that's something I get into in the classroom also, sometimes using that to get the students to do what I want.
Yes.
Blaming them for not doing the assignment correctly or whatever it might be.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Marjorie.
Dr. Moore, this is Joan.
Yes, Joan.
It seems that many of us carry guilt around for years, things that happened maybe in childhood.
Yes.
And it's I recently discovered that I've been feeling guilty for something that happened a long time ago in my very young childhood.
Yes.
And I was having difficulty with the 3 R's because it didn't seem to make much sense to regret something that happened as a child when I clearly didn't know. I didn't know any better.
Yes.
But now in this discussion, it seems that the regret maybe is more for the years spent in feeling guilty. Is that right?
Well, that's just another ignorance.
For years of being feeling guilty for something.
Right. That's just living in ignorance. Not many real people understand that guilt is boasting. As a matter of fact, they feel shocked very often, an undisguised shock when they hear it the first time, that guilt is boasting. But after a short period of reflection, they can see that indeed, and this is why psychoanalysis speaks of intractable guilt, which means that somehow the guilt doesn't yield to psychoanalytic interpretations. No matter how you try to explain something away, an individual who feels guilty, and if you accept his thought about guilt being legitimate, there is no way he's going to give up his guilt, because that is a disguised way of living with self-confirmatory ideation. But if you debunk the guilt by calling it by its rightful name, then suddenly the guilt disappears.
What would be help the way to look at some old incident from childhood, rather than, clearly a child isn't really guilty. What is a helpful way to look at, a child isn't really responsible, doesn't really know better. What is a good way to look at an old incident like that?
Well, if you studied metapsychiatry a little, then you will know that there are 3 R's. And they are the most helpful ways of looking at mistakes: recognition, regret, and reorientation. And Anne has added a 4th R, which is very helpful often, and that is called release. You release it, having understood that it is ignorance and that ignorance you can forgive yourself, because the ignorance is the culprit, not you. So you release it.
What is the meaning of the idea of punishment or the need to be punished? That's just a continuation of the same I am guilty idea.
No, it feels good to be paid attention to in such an intensive way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So punishment is frequently sought after.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
This is Elaine.
Elaine?
I'm interested in knowing how do we respond to someone when they are making an attempt to make us feel guilty?
Well, we say hogwash.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'm particularly in a situation now where my husband and I are getting a divorce, and my youngest child, who's 25, is accusing me of killing his father and trying to really lay a big guilt trip on me.
Yes.
And, trying to respond to him in a very loving way so that I don't do any damage to him directly from the conversation, and yet maintain my own self-confidence and my own self-esteem.
Yes.
It gets to be sometimes a problem.
Yes. Well, you can tell him, I love you and I respect your right to be wrong.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is John.
John, yes.
I've been working with an issue recently, which is an exaggerated sense of responsibility, either about work or family. And it came to mind today that an exaggerated sense of responsibility would make you very ripe for guilt.
Definitely.
My question is, what's an alternative to seeing ourselves as being responsible or being the ones who get to be in control of every situation?
Yes. Well, Jesus gave you the answer to this problem in a very succinct way. He said, on mine own self, I can do nothing. It is the Father in me who doeth the work. You contemplate this very simple statement until it becomes clear to you that you cannot take credit for success and you cannot take credit for failure.
Okay, I'll think about that for a while and maybe ask another question. Thank you.
Do it right away, yeah. John.
Dr. Hora, this is Jenny.
Yes, Ginny.
This whole thing has just been absolutely perfect for me. I'm in the process now. I have two children who one is just turned 23 and one is halfway through her 24th year. And I can see all kinds of ideas beginning to really roll that are relating to this. But it seems that the three of us all agree and have the same fantasy at home. And a lot of it has to do with when my daughter was ill, when she was little, there were times when I knew that I could have and should have done differently or more for my son. Because he was the one that was home and was well. He wasn't getting the kinds of attention that she seems to take priority on community. So I have considered the fact that they are not now interested in leaving home at all as my chain of sight or not. I can see the humor in the whole thing, but it's really a problem for me because they're really not interested in leaving home. And I can see that they are both very willing to replace something or fix it rather than to take good care of it in the first place. I feel ashamed when I hear myself say to myself, I would like some furniture or some furniture house due to that they're purchasing things that totally rotten because they're gone. And
You're not a very possessive mother.
and you're probably right. I can see, and I have come to a somewhat understanding that I am not responsible for preparing their atmosphere anymore, but I have believed that I was. They were very tiny children and did not do well at it. I guess the basic thing that I'd really like to know is how do I get rid of these kids? I think I'd like to approach it in a little more intelligent manner than that. I had a question when I started this, but it's gotten lost in the humor. Can you help me begin to sort this out?
Yeah. Well, it's possible that you are more possessive than you would admit it.
Of the children?
Yes, that you are talking with forked tongue.
Yeah, you're right, I know that, because when I begin to even try to sit down and deal with this issue, I get so agitated by recognizing that all I can think about is what I want, that it has been easier recently to get up and walk out of the situation and consider the I had the same problem with ironing when I was younger, and I solved that problem by getting rid of the iron and the ironing board and buying rolling polyester. But I don't wish to walk away from this problem that way.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand that your children belong to God. And God is in complete control of their lives. And then you leave it in God's hands to guide them and to inspire them when and how to leave home and establish themselves in the world. But you cannot want it or not want it, because then you will have problems.
The actual daily process of living together is really fairly harmonious, much more so than it has been in the past. But I do recognize that we all agree that it's uncomfortable for me to have them there, and it's more comfortable for them to stay there than to get out and learn what they need to know. And they really new experience of learning what they are and what their life is really all about.
The need is yours,
Yeah.
Ginny. The need is to know that they belong to God, and they are divinely governed.
Yeah, I'll have to work on that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Anna.
Yes, Anna.
What is the meaning of wanting to make people feel guilty when they have done some supposed wrong to you?
Yeah, well, maybe you're a Jewish mother.
I'm not.
Well, that is a desire to control people, to have power over them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Anna.
Dr. Hora?
Yes.
My name is Linda, and I've been studying metapsychiatry for about a year now. And my question was guilt concerned. There are feelings I have about a brother who a little older than me. He's 39 and he has 2 children. He lives back east and he's had cancer for 3 years, and now there's a fear that he's going to die.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel really guilty because I'm not sick, or that my kids aren't sick, or all of that. And I don't know what to do with that.
Yes. Well, why don't you get sick?
Well, I think about that too. So I guess I have to fear that maybe that this cancer is catching. That maybe I could get sick someday.
Yes, well, that fear is very widespread nowadays. But if you are studying metapsychiatry for a year, then you have to understand that there is no such thing as sickness, that there are only meaning, remedy to all these fears which are tormenting people is to really understand the teachings of metapsychiatry. How the truth, the knowing of the truth, makes us free of the common mistakes which people suffer from. Like, for instance, feeling guilty, or living in fear, or fearing contagion. All these things, you see, now, what do you think is the meaning of fear and contagion?
I don't know.
Does anyone there know?
Somebody said self-concern.
Who is this somebody? Let him stand up for it. Yes, it's correct. Fear is self-concern. Now, what is contagion?
For that either.
What? What did you say? You don't know that either.
Group self-concern.
Contagion.
Would be group self-concern.
Contagion is the great universal inclination towards self-confirmatory ideation. Only that is contagious, what is self-confirmatory. You see? So what people are afraid of is that they will yield to the temptation to take on other people's ways of confirming themselves. What we are really afraid of is that we will yield to the temptation to be sick. Just like if there is a new fashion garment in the industry, a new dress or a new kind of something to wear which is fashionable, everybody is tempted to buy it. And whenever something becomes very widespread, and either positively or negatively, there is a universal tendency to acquire it. And the same goes for contagions. Today we have various contagions: political, social, cultural, medical, and even spiritual contagions are sweeping the country. And so fear is self-concern, and contagion is self-concern too. So when you clearly state that you feel guilty, that you are not sick the way your brother seems to be sick, you are saying, I am greatly tempted to confirm myself in a similar way as my brother does. On the one hand, I have this unconscious wish. On the other hand, I have the fear that I might yield to this wish, which is self-concern. Now, is it possible for health and joy and freedom and PAGL to be contagious?
I hope so.
Absolutely not. Unfortunately, health, freedom, joy, PAGL, enlightenment, they are not contagious. Now, how can that be? Who knows the answer to the mystery that health is not contagious?
It's not self-confirmatory, isn't it?
Exactly. It is not self-confirmatory, it is God-confirmatory. See, when we are healthy, we are here for God. We are glorifying God in our being. And that is not contagious because we are not very interested in it. We are just primarily interested in self-confirmation. Now, metapsychiatry teaches you to lose interest in self-confirmatory ideation and thereby become increasingly peaceful, assured, grateful, and loving. Isn't that marvelous?
It is. Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Anne. I was wondering if you would expand a little on the issue of rather common experience that when people, when they receive some goodness in their lives, often feel guilty that they have something good that their other family members, neighbors, friends don't have. What is the meaning of that guilt?
That is fear of the four horsemen, Anne. You know the four horsemen?
Yes. Instinct, jealousy, rivalry, and malice.
That's right.
So people are afraid of how other people will think of them.
That's correct, yes. Now, how can one be free of this fear and enjoy the blessings of God's goodness?
You have to see that what much is one, much is all.
Yes, and you have to see that you cannot take credit for the good which has come to you, that it is a gift of God. It's not your own. Therefore, anyone who would envy you and be jealous of you would be just whistling in the dark. Because what God is giving you, no man take it away from you.
Again, the issue would be if you're thinking about the good as self-confirmatory, then you set yourself up as target of horse.
Exactly, Anne. Absolutely. That's the way it is.
Hello, Dr. Hora. It's Roberta.
Yes, Roberta.
I still don't understand about guilt. Somehow I'm missing a point. We say that ignorance is the root of ignorance is self-confirmation, but somehow guilt seems to be more subtle. When we brag or when we are ignorant, it seems more obvious. At least to me, guilt seems the most subtle. I would like to understand what is it that makes it so subtle.
Now, first of all, the root of ignorance is not self-confirmation, but judging by appearances. That's the root of ignorance. Self-confirmatory ideation is just one of the most prevailing forms of ignorance. Now you call guilt subtle. You have to explain what you mean by subtle.
So I was thinking of the mother whose son didn't speak to her. My mother has a similar situation with my brother, and my mother believes she is innocent, which is the next question I wanted to ask about. To my mother, she doesn't see this as an opportunity to learn, but she feels that she is an innocent victim of an ungrateful son.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is subtle is that it seems to prevent us from seeing things happen to us, and we think that we are innocent.
Yes.
And that's the subtlety. It seems like we are good and the world is doing bad things to us.
Yes. Well, then there is no guilt, you see.
Then that would not be guilt.
No, it is just a denial of responsibility.
Then what? So if we deny responsibility, what is it that makes us guilty then?
Well, is your mother doesn't feel guilty.
No, she does not understand
Yes.
why he wouldn't want to see her.
Right.
And she feels that she's innocent.
That's right. So that's.
But I was wondering about, it seems that if we move from ignorance to guilt, we are at least moving closer to that, perhaps questioning.
No, we don't move from ignorance to guilt. We move from guilt to acknowledging ignorance. Because guilt is also ignorance.
I see. Okay.
You got it backwards, Robert.
All right, I see. Both are ignorance. We don't know that we don't know.
That's right.
Okay. And then we feel guilty, which is still not knowing.
That's right.
And at some point we see our ignorance.
That's right.
I'd like to understand the idea of innocence. Is there such a thing as spiritual innocence?
Spiritually, we are all innocent. Everyone is absolutely innocent.
If you would explain that a little further, please.
Well, innocent means that you are a victim of ignorance. You're not a perpetrator of ignorance, you're a victim of it. So you're innocent.
But if we truly understood the concept of guilt as a form of fear and ignorance and self-condemnation, then we could conduct our lives innocently in each situation. As like the woman Elaine, she would say hogwash to the sun kind of thing. She would realize that she is not guilty.
Well, of course.
I see. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Robert.
Maybe you need to explain a little bit, to clarify what is guilt also.
It is not clear to you, Jan, what makes it boastful?
If you have read that, she's shaking her head as she doesn't understand.
I see. Well, how does religion inculcate guilt with the phrase mea culpa? What does that mean?
Maxima culpa.
Mea maxima culpa, and you beat your chest, don't you? By beating your chest. Now, what does that gesture imply?
Self-concern.
Of course, it's self-confirmation. You're beating yourself, and you're emphasizing your selfhood apart from God.
To say, I'm bad.
I am bad, which is the same as if you said, I am terrific. I'm great. Everybody could see that that is bragging, right? Well, I am bad has become a virtue in religion. To say something bad about oneself is considered very nice, very religious.
Dr. Hora, this is Alexandra.
Yes, Alexander.
Doesn't the guiltiness also carry with it the implication that there's something so special about you that you should have known better? It sort of puts you above other people, and it's boasting because it says, well, I should have known better. And it's kind of like, I should have been smarter or more aware of something.
Right. I've studied metapsychiatry.
Yeah.
That's right. It is a devious way of boasting. That's all there is to it. And the sooner you understand it, the less likely you will treat yourself into this miserable condition of feeling guilty, which doesn't lead anywhere, doesn't solve anything, and doesn't reform anybody. See, nobody gets reformed by feeling guilty. Guilt has no remedy. It is just a self-perpetuating, deceitful way of indulging oneself in self-confirmatory ideation.
Dr. Hora, this is Linda.
Yes, Linda.
I wanted to go back to the question about that Anne asked in the beginning of the hour about the healing of guilt.
Yeah.
If when one does something that is ignorant and then admits they're ignorant and there really is a healing there, and then the healing effect on the other party.
Yes.
Is it always the case then if there is a genuine healing there and that all parties concerned are healed, or is it contingent on the other party's receptivity?
It is really amazing that if you reject guilt in yourself, then everything gets quickly healed. Even the people who you feel guilty about, even without saying anything. You refuse to feel guilty, and there are no grudges hanging around. Anyone who gets healed of guilt is really doing a favor to others if you refuse to feel guilty. And we don't speak about being callous or denying responsibility, but if you refuse to be guilty, to feel guilty, it will benefit everyone concerned. You acknowledge ignorance and you regret your ignorance, but you absolutely refuse to indulge in guilt feeling.
That is amazing. That is wonderful.
It sure is.
Yes, thank
Linda.
you. This is Jenny.
Yes, Jenny.
I think what Linda is saying, and what you just discussed with her, kind of touches at your answer to me. I had been messing about in my own feelings and my behavior and trying to observe it from that point of view. But what you really asked me to do is to clarify my perception of what the children are,
Right.
rather than fool around in the situation. Is that correct?
Yes, of course. And whose children are they anyway?
I know the correct answer is God, but most of the time I think they're mine.
Well, that is the rub.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very clarifying.
You're welcome.
Dr. understands, then part of the healing process is really seeing the whole situation as from an entirely different perspective, in which case you see that nothing really happened. Your ostensible state, or that's all part of the self-confirmatory nature of the thinking that you did something so bad.
Right.
That's very liberating.
It sure is.
That you don't have to fix it, but that you can see that it didn't really happen the way you thought.
Right. Many fingernails will be saved.
Right.
It's that, Dr. Hora.
Yes, Vera.
I would like to ask you what to do when I feel guilty because I don't feel guilty for something.
Well, you have to take lessons, Vera.
I don't know if it's a real guilt feeling. I was growing up in a made to feel guilty for anything. Even if my mother broke the plate, I had to feel guilty because it was so broken because of me.
Yeah, well, that's Hungarian for you.
Yeah, it's a Hungarian, I'm Catholic.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So what kind of lesson I have to say?
Well, have you heard what was said? Guilt is boasting.
Yeah. Okay.
You stop boasting.
Always goes like that.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As far as John again,
Yes, John.
there's been a lot of discussion today about guilt being used as a way of manipulating children.
Yes.
And especially you mentioned Jewish mothers,
Yes.
Catholic
Yeah.
upbringing, and so forth. Is there a feeling of resentment that might accompany having been brought up
To feel guilty?
to feel guilty about everything?
Definitely. Definitely. Deep down, you resent this misguided education, this miseducation.
And the question is, how can we be healed of the resentment? I mean, is the process of understanding the meaning of guilt get us closer to being healed of the resentment, or get us closer to forgiving the lack of understanding?
Definitely, certainly. We cannot blame the Jewish mothers. I don't know about the church.
Yeah, it's cleared up.
Sometimes it's possible that somebody would consciously apply this technique to control people. But anyway, everyone is really innocent, you know. This has been a curse on mankind, and if people don't understand it, it is just a shocking realization whenever you try to explain to someone that guilt is boasting.
What is regret a form of compassion?
Yes, that's right. Regret helps to be compassionate. Yes,
We understand our own lack of understanding.
that's right. Exactly.
Dr. Hora, this is Marilyn.
Yes, Madeline.
Bill has a Jewish mother, and having a Jewish mother, I'm seeing the same thoughts run through, and that is, my mother used to try to make us feel very guilty because she had very hard life. She suffered a lot,
Yeah.
and she tried to control us with her guilt. And I've had a very easy life, and haven't suffered a lot, but I still have these thoughts that I want my family to see that I work hard and I suffer. Right, and I really don't. I'm not clear on what it is I'm getting from this and the meaning of this
Yeah.
thought.
Well, you are manipulating your family to appreciate you better. It will backfire if you continue doing it.
But it's just, again, it seems like a thing. It's just a subtle thing that creeps in there where I have this little thought that I want to.
Yeah,
They
will resent you for making them love you. They will hate you for making them love you. Isn't that something?
Yeah. My daughter is sitting next to me here.
Well, that's embarrassing.
She's shaking her head. So I just, when I'm aware of this thought, would it be helpful?
Well, you know, it is a sin to influence people, even to influence people to love us. We don't influence people. The metapsychiatric ethic says we are to be influential, but never to influence. And preach metapsychiatry non-verbally.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
Dr. This is Marjorie.
Yes, Martin.
I don't understand the meaning of the responsibility that you're talking about when referring to guilt between ignoring it and acting innocent or wanting to be innocent and taking responsibility. I wasn't clear on what that meant.
Yes, well, we define responsibility. Do you know how we define responsibility?
The ability to respond.
Yes, to what God wants.
Oh, I see. I didn't finish it, and I didn't understand. I see.
Yeah, you should just finish it.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe not be guilty to God.
Right.
Is that possible?
No.
In the Bible, Jesus says in the prodigal son, I have sinned against heaven and against thee, Father.
Yes.
What is that? Would that be boasting?
It would be, yes. We don't talk much about sin. The only sin we talk about is in connection with influencing, because that's trespassing. Otherwise, we never talk about sin, only ignorance.
The prodigal had rejected the good of God, and then he came to realize that.
Right.
Is that bad an appropriate guilt?
Well, the prodigal has never studied metapsychiatry. He would have said, I regret deeply for having been so ignorant as to separate myself from the good which you are.
I see, that is the appropriate thing.
That's right.
It's regret.
Regret, yes.
Right. So one is not bad, so it's just dumb.
Dumb, yes, that's good.
Well, thank you very much. We have come to the end of our seminar.
Okay, bye everyone.
Goodbye.